This is Recruiting Unfiltered. He's a Division I player.
Committed for suicide, basically.
We're going to cover the full gamut. The roster limits actually become a detriment.
High school athletes need to really open their eyes.
We are here to talk everything recruiting. Recruiting Unfiltered. All right, guys, welcome in. Recruiting Unfiltered. Hope you guys have started your new year off the way it's supposed to be, and resolutions and commitments and all that motivation is now discipline. We love it all. Larry, welcome in, man. Hope it was a good start to your new year. And I know this is when it comes to recruiting and sports and national championships and all that. We are in the throes of it, brother.
Absolutely, man. It's a great time of year for a lot of athletes. Gosh, there's so many things going on. Club volleyball is kicking off strong right now. Like you said, you got the national championships, all of that stuff going on. It's just a lot of things, a lot of moving parts in the sports world right now.
Larry, you've been in this business for a long time. I want to get to like women's emerging sports and maybe sports we don't know enough about that are ignorant, that scholarships and opportunities are out there. But I want to talk about these emerging sports. But before we get into that, leading into this, with recruiting and emerging sports, would you say most of the people with all your years of experience in this are really dialed into recruiting? And I'm talking about parents, even some coaches that are at the lower levels, dialed into these emerging sports and the understanding of them? Or do you think there's still a major ignorance, and not on purpose, but a major ignorance because of lack of coverage, that there's scholarships and opportunities out there in the growing part of these women's and more emerging sports?
Well, you're going to have people who don't understand the process. Recruiting in every sport is the same. You have 4 steps of that process. But in these emerging sports, and we're talking about sports like, female wrestling is really taking off. Flag football is going crazy here in the
Rugby
South.
as well. Sports like rugby as well, right?
Right. We were around with lacrosse and soccer when they really took off in the early to mid 90s. And then you got your other sports, not for women as well, and men is like things like bass fishing. So many people don't even understand that just because you're not 6'2" and weigh 235 pounds and run a 4.5 40, that doesn't mean you can't go to college and compete wearing a jersey and get the opportunity to win championships at the collegiate level and several other sports. And some of these minor sports are really taking off. Again, flag football on the women's side, they're offering scholarships, Sean. These young ladies are getting to get football scholarships to go and compete for their college. And but that process is the same as if they were a regular football player or a basketball player or a baseball player. That process of getting into the recruiting process is exactly the same. What happens is people don't understand the dynamics of each one of those sports with regard to roster limits, what schools offer scholarships, what school or club-based sports only, that sort of thing. So that's kind of what we do, is help guide them down that path a little bit and help them understand and navigate that process.
And Larry, I'm one that's kind of ignorant to it. Now, here I've played professional sports, was a top recruit coming out of school, was recruited in Division I in 3 different sports, been covering the media and playing sports for 40 years. And I train quarterbacks that are getting involved and getting recruited every year. And do you know, until I became part of NSR and did a deeper dive into, and we all see it on TV, the commitment to flag football, see a lot of girls playing that and growing up in the youth and club sports and more wrestling and more rugby. But I still think, and I'm one of them, and this conversation, if I'm in it and I'm watching and covering and talking sports every day and having kids getting recruited every single day, and I'm a father of 3, and I don't know that whether it's bass fishing or rugby or whether it's women's wrestling or flag football, I know they exist, but I would have never been able to tell you, they're giving scholarships away for women's flag football, and I'm in it. And so it's been a learning curve for me. So how do we approach parents? I mean, it's not the parents' fault because the access to it. How do we get access to that? And I'm not just talking NSR, but I'm a dad of a daughter, and she's a wrestler. And I think, well, we're just doing this for fun and when high school's over. But you realize she's dominating every friggin' week. Where do I find this information?
Right.
When did this become, it
Yeah.
started to explode nationally. When did this explode scholarship wise and knowing there's money for an education out there?
You know, the entire process in every single sport that you mentioned, Sean, has to begin with an evaluation. Okay. So, you know, the parents need to understand there are scouts available in their areas that can do an evaluation, whether it's in person or via film, and get that athlete evaluated, number one. And they have to determine if they have a skill set that translates to the college level. You know, my background also is football. But my background is also bass fishing. So I understand that sport and the dynamics of that sport and how it, you know, what all the athletes need to be doing to be considered a prospect. And, you know, so number one, the families need to understand we got to get eyes on that athlete to determine if they have a skill set that translates to that next level. Once we get to that point, then you know we're going to interview that athlete to determine if they are somebody we want to work with, that we want to hang our name around their neck and walk them into college coaches, because you know we're not open enrollment. We
Right.
choose the athletes that we want to work with, so that's a huge part of it. Then we got to get them into the process, those recruiting process, becoming identified and recognized by college coaches, and going into the steps of the process and working towards that offer where they get the opportunity to get financial aid in return for them playing athletics, whatever their sport may be. You know, and that's the agreement that schools are going to make with these athletes if we get their information in front of these coaches, where they can make a determination to say they fit what we are looking to do moving forward.
Okay, I'm covering these sports and I talk about it, and as a parent and as a person who loves sports and loves the growing impact and also the opportunity for these young women and an opportunity to play and compete against each other. So, Larry, we're talking about this, and all of a sudden somebody comes to me and I say, well, yeah, my daughter's she's a slot receiver and she is really good. But there can't be that many opportunities. And this is the way I felt. There can't be. What am I going to do? How many places? I don't even know where to begin to look, the frustration. And I feel it now as I'm sitting here. So imagine somebody who's overwhelmed with this, and everybody keeps telling them, your daughter can play. What a great athlete. Is she thought about playing against the guys, right? And you start to hear that. We hear it all the time. And maturity. And so, Larry, I'm gonna be the point counterpoint. I'm the guy on the other shoulder saying, there's no way anybody out there can lead me to a scholarship. The world's too big and there's not enough opportunities. What do you say to that? If I'm that guy that said, nah, I'm the dad of my daughter. Come on, man, I'm not going to chase this around. There's not that many scholarships and money available for a women's flag football player. What do you say about that?
Well, you would be amazed, Sean, to understand how many of these colleges actually offer the athlete scholarships to play flag football. And it's not just, you know, it started out really in the South, but it's starting to move outward and you know, and go up into New England and go into the Midwest, and more colleges from big school programs all the way down to the smallest JUCOs are offering these kids, these young ladies, opportunities to get their degrees by using their sport as the tool that gets them there. And it's just opening up so many more opportunities for these young athletes that were never there for them before. And I just think it's great. You know, you and I both got the opportunity to wear our college colors and represent our school. And these young ladies and young bass fishermen and young rugby players are going to get that opportunity if they have a skill set that translates to that next level. You know, they do have to be evaluated, and they do have to be good at what they do. You know, these coaches are recruiting them just like they're recruiting other athletes. And but I think it's just, man, I'm telling you, like the analogy I used a minute ago, so many kids now have an opportunity to compete at the college level. That was never there before for a lot of these kids. And I just think it's awesome that there are more and more schools that are building these programs and giving these kids opportunities.
Larry Perrin is the executive director of NSR. I'm Sean Salisbury, the national football director at NSR. We're talking women's emerging sports. All right, so you send that to me, and I come back. And one thing I think a lot of people are concerned with, Larry, is funding. And
Mm.
I am too. Say, with all that's going on, we're taking stuff away, man. We're trying to do this. And COVID hit, and we took sports, other sports that weren't the mainstream sports on campuses, men or women, making it more difficult. So when somebody asks me, and I'm like, well, funding, yeah, that seems to be a problem. How committed are these universities, do we think, as with your depth of knowledge on this, Larry, of staying committed to this long-term funding available for these schools? And are they going to make money at the schools when they do this? Because women's sports do not get enough coverage. So how are we selling that to get funding?
Well, just we have to make hay while the sun's up. You know what I mean? And we have to take advantage of these opportunities for these kids now while that funding is available. Is it long term? I do not know, because this is a fluid situation. We all know how the impact of NIL is having on college budgets and that sort of thing. So, but I think for the schools that have made the leap into these additional sports, I think that they've got a long-term plan to grow the sports in each one of them. I'll give you bass fishing as an example. I mean, you've got more and more colleges coming online now, recruiting both male and female athletes to come to their programs, and they're doing this outside of the traditional mechanism of funding, which comes from grants and admissions and that sort of thing. They're out there fundraising to cover their budgets, and so some of these smaller sports, these new emerging sports, have opportunities to do things that are, because they may not be governed by the NCAA as strictly as other sports are. Where they can do fundraising, they can do camps, they can do things to get additional funding to build those budgets up a little bit.
How do we tell a kid that's athletic? And I've tried to figure this out, going through all the, you go through high school, some have it, some don't. Do we ever think we're going to get to the point? I'm thinking, well, maybe, how kids in men's sports will transfer schools, they'll leave a state to go somewhere. We see it all the time. Are we to the point with these great athletes and these women's athletes, whether it's rugby or wrestling, the kids are going to start moving because there's a lot of money and funding and scholarship opportunities available, move to places that are doing it? Or would it be find a mainstream women's sport? What do we tell these kids? And I'm trying to figure out, okay, what do we tell these kids? Or if you're a parent, say, man, I got a scholarship worthy wrestler here, female wrestler in a growing and emerging sport. Will it become mainstream? Do we expect these sports to become mainstream to the point where funding's the same as it would be for women's basketball, what Caitlin Clark has done for that and emergence there? And this is kind of a late, these three we're talking about, you're talking about bass fishing, and maybe it's been around a long time, but the world doesn't know about the scholarship part of it. And I've been in it, Larry, for that long. And what rugby for women, and with this flag football. Will we get to a point where it's like, oh yeah, here's the recruiting. We're talking about it just as openly as we do every other sport?
Man, I'm going to give you the LPV, the Larry Perrin version.
Yes. Yep.
I pray that we don't get to the point where these kids are jumping schools and doing all these things like these other athletes are doing. The ideal situation is a young person finds a fit that fits what they're looking for academically, athletically, socially, spiritually, whatever the fit may be, and that they go to school there for their allotted time and that they graduate with those degrees. That's why they're going to college, man. You're not going to college to wrestle. You're going to college to get a degree, hopefully. And, I think in the big world, in the big sports, we kind of lost sight of that a little bit. And I just hope that these emerging sports and these newer sports that are coming online, these young people appreciate the opportunity that they were given by the school that they chose to go to, and that they fulfill their academic obligations there. They receive their degree and they become a great alumni and a great supporter of that school. That's how those programs are going to grow, is when you start building an alumni base.
Family and fans and people to listen to, key words of what we're talking about are evaluation. The evaluation, and getting the college coaches to respect the evaluation. So they keep coming back so people can go find these scholarships. And you say, how? Well, study and doing all the things in the depth and understanding rules and understanding where it's going. And to me, an expert, you got to know the past to understand the present and the future. And when you do, how it's moving forward, and recruiting's no different. So with this, when I'm talking to someone, and for you parents, say, well, how do you evaluate a a women's club or school flag football player? And here's what I tell them. I evaluate them the same damn way I do a wide receiver that plays an 11-on-11 men's high school football.
Exactly.
That's how I'm evaluating them. If you're a slot receiver, I'm judging you the same way I would have judged Julian Edelman. If you're a quarterback, you drop back. I'm looking at mechanics the same way I would if I was looking at a 5-star recruit on the high school at South Lake Carroll in Texas. That's exactly how we're doing it. Larry, I don't know if you disagree, but it's the same thing. So I would lead into this as I love to fish, but the insight. How would you tell somebody who says, I got a daughter that can out bass fish anybody, and she's scholarship worthy. She's in the South. All right, Larry, how do you scout a bass fisherman? Honestly, some people have zero idea. I love to fish, but let's get to your expertise, which is a lot of things, but just on bass, what are you looking for when you recruit somebody? I know what I am in football and basketball and baseball and volleyball, a female bass fisherman. What are you looking for?
Does she love the sport? Number one. Is she eating up with it? Is this the kid that goes out on the water, spends 12 hours on the water out in the 100-degree heat, that is never eats or drinks while they're out there, that's totally engrossed in that day? Number one. Number two is, do they understand all the techniques that are specific? Do they understand electronics? Do they understand that fishing at the collegiate level and up is a business? So do they understand marketing and how to build the brand and how to bring value to the college program? And, that comes with a social media presence, a YouTube presence, all of that sort of stuff. College coaches in bass fishing are not just looking for fishermen or women. They're looking for somebody that can bring value to their program. Can they edit film? Do they understand social media and the algorithms to help push their brand? Because these young anglers that are going to these colleges are not just representing themselves. They're representing that brand on the jersey now. So it's all about getting eyeballs to that brand. And it is about a business, because that's how they raise money. That's how they fund the majority of their programs.
And so, Larry, in judging this, you're that passion for the game. First question I ask for you parents out there when somebody comes to me, does the kid love to play? And then for Larry and I, and don't want me to speak for, I always want to know, do you love it or do the parents love it? That I do. Wow. I'm looking, do you love it or do the parents? Are you calling me? Are you up at 6? Are you doing the lonely work that it takes? So basically, bass fishermen or bass fishing scholarships or opportunities, you and I have had conversations about commitment and all that. We've had it on here, Larry. So your commitment, the same commitment you're talking about, a kid who's up till his hands bleed hitting balls out of the bunker, is the same way you're talking about a bass fisherman. And so when somebody says, are there big scholarships available outside the South in the fishing world, what are you saying to them?
Absolutely there are. And it's growing more every day. And it's growing more every day in flag football, in women's wrestling, in rugby, in these sports that were traditionally clubbed for the female side of it. These are expanding drastically. And it's the effort of somebody on campus making a decision to say, we need to bring in more kids to our school. And how can we do that? And they have these other sports that they add. They get initial funding from the school themselves, from an alumni basis, from contributions, that sort of thing. And then a lot of these minor sports are doing their own fundraising to help booster that budget a little bit more. So, yeah, there are scholarships available, not just in bass fishing, but these other minor sports as well. And I think it is just it's the antithesis of the major college. It's real college, man. It's like it was when we went to college. That's what I'm trying to get. That's the point I'm trying to get across. It's the passion for the game, whatever that game is. It's the love for competition. It is the love to represent their school, the pride that they get to represent their school. And in the end, that college degree.
I'm Sean Salisbury. That's Larry Perrin. He's the executive director of NSR. And Larry, with that, just to validate it, when we want to know how much is out there, living in Texas and training quarterbacks for a long time, I was training a kid who was a really good player, young southpaw thrower. And I was talking to his parents when we were training. We were going through a session. We were done. And as we moved forward, and they started to send message that he was thinking about getting away from football. And I said, well, he's got some potential. And he was one of those kids you look at and say, 2 years from now, this kid's got a chance. Tough, left-hander, played in a good system. And they said, well, Sean, he's going to start committing a little more to being a roper. And I'm in Texas. But even like I've said, so and making sure we get eyes to it, part of the reason we do this podcast, but also understanding what's out there so your kids can capitalize in these sports that are not mainstream, that are new, when we say new level, that are taking it to a new level. And so he became in turn became a phenomenal roper and has moved on and going to school to be a roper with scholarship money available. Now, Larry, I don't know. I'll tell you what, there's a few things that I like to think I know a lot about. I can tell you one thing I don't. Don't come to me to evaluate your roper. I'm going to send you to somebody else because I'm still learning what that takes. But I'm sure commitment is at the top of that. All right, Larry, as we wind this down on this podcast, with these sports, do we see a point in time, because we're seeing it grow in broadcasting and everything else, these sports are on a regular basis, and we're seeing more of it. Is there going to come a time that we think that we're going to be sitting here and podcasts and shows are going to revolve around what we'd call the non-traditional women's sports? Are we growing that fast in this business?
I believe so. There are already some programs out there. I watched flag football, the Alabama State High School Championship on local television. They broadcasted it along with the normal Super 7 that they had for the traditional 11-man men's football. That was broadcast. The flag football was broadcast just as much. And I was physically there at the semifinals and watched and evaluated athletes at that event. And it was at the Crampton Bowl down here in Montgomery. So yeah, I think that there's going to be some niches out there because there's more and more people becoming interested in it. As the interest grows, it will bring corporate eyes in, and the business people will start to see that there's opportunity there to monetize these potentially. And, so yeah, I think that as these sports grow in popularity, I think there will be more media coverage of them.
Yeah, and think about just males. And my kid was a great baseball shortstop, switched to lacrosse when he got to high school, and I fell in love with it. And obviously, the lacrosse is a booming sport. I almost feel like these women's emerging sports are what women's basketball used to be when I was growing up, where they didn't get a lot of pub, and women were like, well, how far can we go with this? And next thing you know, it's exploded. And we're seeing it. Women's golf is as good as it's ever been.
Absolutely.
So the players and the emergence of it and scholarships. So it's growing. So my message today, and Larry, I think you probably agree with this, is that you no longer, if you're great at fishing and you're a female, or if you're a great wrestler, have to say, well, I got to get out of this sport and go play volleyball or softball, which are great because, well, I'm not going to get discovered and I'm not going to have a chance to go scholarship. So I got to kind of crowbar my way into another sport, even though you may have a great skill and a toughness as a female rugby player. Now your kid and your daughter can stay committed to that, Larry, and find that there's opportunity out there without having to switch a sport that you may not like, but you're doing because you want to get free college, which has happened to a lot of people. But now the stuff that isn't are emerging, and they're exploding through the roof on a regular basis. You go to them, I go to them, the crowds that are there and the number of teams in tournaments in these club and school, it's off the charts, Larry. It's off the charts right now.
Yeah.
Great opportunity for women's emerging sports right now.
Absolutely. We saw it in cheer when cheer started being recognized as a sport, and it just took off. And if you want to go to one of the loudest events you've ever been to in your life, go to a competitive cheer event in Atlanta, Georgia, when they've got 20,000 kids in there screaming at the same time. And these kids are scholarship athletes at a lot of programs, and cheer and dance as well. So yeah, it's just and you're starting to see now more cheer and dance competition shown on ESPN.
No doubt.
These other sports are going to follow that same track.
Getting eyes to it and evaluation. He's Larry Parent. He's the executive director of NSR. Sean Salisbury. This is Recruiting Unfiltered. I'm the national football director for NSR. Next time, roster limits. Remember when we talked about rosters and the limits and increasing how good it was going to be? Have roster limits actually become a detriment to college sports? We'll discuss that and more. And we'll have a special guest next time. Larry, great stuff. Look forward to it. And look forward to next week. You guys take care. We are in the throes of the transfer portal with men, and I'm sure we'll discuss that next time as well. Look forward to it. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.